Hello, everyone, and welcome to another GateDrop.com podcast. Joining me today again is Andy McKinstry, but we've also got Brian Jorgensen on board. Welcome, Brian, and thank you for doing this. We're going to talk to Brian about his career, a long career and a very successful career. But before we get to his professional side, Brian, I want to ask you, how did you get into the sport initially, and who were your heroes? Who did you look up to growing up?
Well, thanks a lot for bringing me on here. It's an honor. So how did I get into the sport? Well, it started at a very young age. I have a brother that started riding. He is still 3.5 years older than me, and he started riding. And I believe I was like 3 years old, and I could see that he, went out riding with a motorbike, and I was completely. I really wanted to do it, and I was asking my mom and dad if I could go riding, and my mom said, no, you're not going to go riding motorcycles, you're too clumsy, and I always fall over things. And when I was eating dinner, I will, let, go a couple fall down, and, very, very, not really completely in charge of my coordination, I think. So she said, no, it's not possible. Your brother, your dad is in charge of what he had to do, and you can, I'm gonna take care of you, and you're gonna, start dancing. So I went to dancing lessons when I was about 3.5, and that really didn't go down very, very well in my system. I was trying to go out cycling, and I love something with wheels. And I remember when I was 4 years old, I was pushing my brother's bike around the garden. And one day I convinced my dad, when my mom was out shopping, that it was a very good idea that we try this motorcycle. And that's basically how I started. And my first meeting with my bike, my dad was sitting behind me and tried to control the clutch lever, because normally I think most people, they start on an automatic, but my brother was already 7, so he had a bike with gears. So my dad just put me on and said, you just have to let go of the clutch very slowly and turn the throttle a little bit. So he said, can you do that? I said, yes, no problem. No helmet, no nothing, And I just turned the throttle wide open, and I let go of the clutch, and the bike, of course, wheeled, and the front brake lever hit me down in my eye here. That's why I have like quite a big lump on my eye. So, that was a very successful first meeting with the bike. And I think my mom was very proud when she came home and saw that we were not home because we were in the hospital. And that time we didn't have mobile phones, so we could not really call. So the only thing she saw when she came home from shopping was just a lot of blood everywhere, So that was my first meeting, and that's basically how it started. I was not allowed in Denmark to get a license until you're 10 years old. So I kind of rode just from when I was 4.5 until I was about 10. And then I took my license because my birthday is on 17th of March. And I started racing in April. That must have been 85, yeah. And then it just took off there. So basically, it was just my inspiration from my brother, and my dad had never, he had like a normal motorcycle when he was young, but never had anything to do with racing or anything like that. So it basically came up because one of his friends, he was working at Suzuki Denmark, the importer of Suzuki Denmark, and he brought this bike home to my dad and said, this is what your sons have to do. And he was like, no, not really. He didn't know anything about it. But it started like that. And basically when I was 10, things just start taking off really quickly. I started doing my first race, and I won that. I remember that really well. And then already the following year, I got my first, I won my first Danish championship in the best class in the 85 class. And that was the start.
So did it come quite easy to you riding a bike? Did you feel you had a good fit in with the bike? Obviously, if you were winning straight away, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I think I was always due to do something with wheels. I always been very active. I do a lot of cycling when I was young. I was never home, and of course we didn't have mobile phones or other things to kind of distractor for sitting at home. So I was always playing and cycling, and so something with wheels was probably always in my nature. But yeah, I would say motorcycle riding was coming quite natural, really easy to me. You know, one of the things that I'm probably, you know, quite recognized for in the World Championship is my style of riding with my elbows up, you know. And the first time I got on the bike on a proper track, you can say, my dad always said, "Get those elbows down. You know, you look completely stupid that you have them up here, you know." But later on, it came kind of a new, how can you say, a new revolution of riding style from the American riders, you know, having your elbows up here. So I guess it kind of became natural already from the beginning without being born with too much of a gift, you know.
I'd read a quote, I think it was in the mid-90s, you were talking that you really worked on your style in order to maybe try and impress Grand Prix teams when you're trying to break through. Was that true, or was my memory failing me a bit?
Well, I don't know if I worked on my style, but I was always I was always like a fun rider, you know, and when I say fun rider, I mean I always like to have fun with the bike. I always played a lot with the bike, you know, and my dad always said, "Don't put the bike sideways, you know, and just go straight through there, you know." But I never really listened to his, you can say, bad advice, because you know, that was one of the things what I loved about racing and riding, was that you could do whatever you want when you're in there, you know, and that's something that I remember from being a kid, you know, my dad constantly saying, "Don't show off and don't put the bike sideways, because one day you're going to crash and people are going to be laughing, you know, off you." And I think he's right, you know. Everyone was clapping and, you know, you're doing really well. And I was going off with my hands here and there, you know. But he said, one day you make mistake, you know, everyone's going to be laughing. So that's why he tried to keep me with my feet on the ground, you know. But then I remember later on in in racing and professional racing, you know, I was so happy that I learned this skill to put the bike sideways, because sometimes you're up in there. And, you know, I remember at the race in '99, you know, someone crashed in front of me. I remember, I think it was Ryan Hughes. He crashed in Majora, and I was in the air, you know, on a big jump, and I just pushed my bike completely sideways, and actually, when I landed, I just missed the rear wheel of his bike, you know. And then you think, well, it's actually good that I learned those skills when I was young, you know. So then I looked up in there and I thought, that here you see that it makes sense that I can move the bike and put the bike sideways, you know.
So 1994, I believe you were racing the European Championship and you're going against Sebastian Tortelli, who most people will know. He was sort of a teenage superstar coming into his form at that point. And then you rode a Grand Prix at the very end of the year. I think you got points in the last round. Can you talk us through that year and that step into Grand Prix? How difficult was that for you?
Yeah, you know, just to take it, I can take it just a little step back, because that explains a little bit, you know, my developing of my career at that time. You know, when I was 14, you know, I already won two championships in the 85 class, and moved up to the 125 when I was just about 13. I was not really that tall of a guy, and really thought that I could just be dominating in a bigger class as well, you know. And I didn't quite have the speed, and I didn't have the power probably either. And a lot of things happened around me that set me back a little bit. You know, my dad got diagnosed with cancer, and brain cancer. So that was a very difficult and devastating moment, because we didn't know at that time, when I was just about 14, what's going to happen and how, you know, we're going to move on from here, you know. So those 2 years from when I was 14 to about 16 was probably, you know, you go into your teenage developing, you know, and I moved up to a bigger class and was dominating from the first point when I raced in the 85 class, you know, small wheels and big wheels. And then coming up, I would say it was probably, you know, one really difficult time of my life, because of so many things. You know, I could see that if my dad's operation and everything went well, you know, it would still be set back, but, you know, he would still be here. And, you know, the sport is difficult, and it's expensive, and you need to be a family to be able to to do the whole thing, you know. So I didn't really become that successful in the 125 class. You know, I was 2 years as a junior 125. You can say the same like in the British. You know, you have the youth class, and then you go into the Maxis or whatever you call it, the British Championship. You know, so those 2 years was really difficult, and he finally passed away when I was just 16 in August that year, and that's why, you know, I didn't really attempt to try a European Championship. I didn't do a lot of racing, only the Danish Championship, and then I tried a couple of European Championship in '93. In '92, I tried a couple of European Championships, and it didn't really go well because it was difficult to create the finances. And, you know, I had to work. I was working as a plumber at that time, and, you know, tried to get an education after my dad passed away. And, you know, I had to be the mechanic, and I had to drive the van, which I didn't have a driving license for as well, you know, to go out practicing. And I just had to tell my mom, you know, that I was just going to pick up someone down the road. And she said, who is that? And I said, you know, that guy is, and, you know, so that was basically my story, how I wanted to ride so bad that I would do anything to kind of get there, you know. So those years was a really struggling years for me. And but I learned a lot mentally, you know, and I took every step of the way I took into my own responsibility, and really wanted to still be successful of what I did, but had to work on every step, you know, getting the finances, being the mechanic, you know, trying to train as much as I could with the time that I have available. And then, like you said, you know, we're up to the moment of 93, where I did my first whole series of European Championship, and I finished 7th that year. And then I changed from KTM into Honda, and then, you know, the next year I rode together with Sebastian Sotelli, and we were fighting the whole year for the championship. You know, if I was not first, then he was second, and the other way around, you know. And it basically came down to Germany, you know, at the final race in Rio in Germany. And I won that championship, and that was the, you know, that was one of my biggest moments in racing, because everything that you had to get through to get here. And, you know, when I went out to the first European Championships the year before, I had to kind of steal diesel, you know, and, you know, stowing in the night and suck diesel from the other truck to be able to come home, because I just didn't have the finance to do it. And then the next year, following year, to be European champion was just it was just amazing, you know. And then I did that first World Championship in the end of '94, and I think I got some points, but it was not. I started out with a massive crash in time practice, and it kind of set me off a little bit for the rest of the weekend. But that's probably where I realized, okay, now you became good at the European Championship, and you won that title, which was a big achievement for myself. But there was a big step, you know, there was a big step to be taken to go into the World Championship. So it was a totally different level. Did 1995 on a private team again, with doing 11 rounds of the World Championship, and I believe there was 12 or 13 rounds at that time. My best results was at the last round of the World Championship on the same place that I won the European Championship before. And I got a 6th place in one of the moto on a private Honda, you know. And that basically just led me into to get in contact with Rob Hooper from the UK, and signed my first professional deal in 1996, and that's where it basically took off.
You had mentioned you battled with Sebastian Tortelli there, and obviously he got a factory ride and went straight to the front. From your perspective, was that quite frustrating, him doing that? Because you were obviously a bit more of a slower process, but at the same time, you were coming from Denmark, so maybe you needed that extra time.
Yeah, you know what? It was very difficult to accept, you know, that I didn't have the opportunity to, or even got asked. You know, we were battling all year, but He was quite a lot younger than me. I was probably about 18, something like that, 18 and 19, and he was only 16. But again, it's so difficult to compare riders against their developing, because like I said, in my life, it set me back like 2 years because of what happened in my family and everything else. And I didn't have the money to go out. And I was probably not even ready for it. I couldn't really go together with people that had a lot of experience of racing the World Championship, where Sebastian Totelli was working with Jackie Vimon already at that time, which have already been world champion, So he was always getting good support. And, we know the French people have been very successful for so many years. I was kind of the first Danish guy that actually, went in as a professional rider, and I didn't have anyone to lean against, how to train, what to train. And, so I was just kind of doing everything on my own. But yeah, it was, I remember it was very difficult to work with in the beginning. And then actually went into that last round of 1995 in the World Championship, or 1994. I remember Sebastian Totelli became, he did a really good race there. And I was like, what happened in 1.5 months? From the last European Championship ended to that first round of the World Championship, I think he got a 6-7 place or something, and I was struggling down just to get a couple of points, and that's where the mental gain of always riding with the best, in France, and working with a coach that can teach you how to deal with the pressure, and I was just not mental strong enough at that point. So it was difficult, but later on it turned out to be okay.
And in 1996, you had the chance to sign with Rob Hooper's Suzuki team. What was it like being part of his setup? And I'm not sure if you got an overall podium that year, but I think you got your first top 3 race result and you were 11th overall. So that was probably a big season for your career. I had thought that was maybe the first year you'd moved to England, but maybe you moved to England beforehand. And if so, how did you adapt to life in England?
Yeah, like I said, 1996 was my first year with Rob. I moved over to his private house in Ruisley, a little bit north from Birmingham, and it was fantastic. It was a good, you can say, it was a good transformation for me to go from Denmark. I had my Danish, the guy that I won the European Championship with, that helped me as a mechanic. He moved with me and moved with Rob. We lived in a small room, only like 10 or 12 square meters. I don't remember quite, but it was very nice of Rob and his family that me and him could live on that little room. And it was not about the sizes of the room or sizes about the camper. It was actually just me being given this opportunity, to do World Championship on the best level, in the 125 World Championship. And I remember being very, when I look back at some of the pictures and with my eyes that I saw the truck and everything at that time, I just saw it it was impressive, like the big truck and everything. And when you look back at it now, you think maybe it was not like that great, but it's again about your mindset and how you see things and how much you want it. And for me, it was a great opportunity, and I got the best out of it. And I remember going to the first World Championship, and that was in Italy. And like you said, I got my first podium, my first ever race as a professional rider. I went there and I got second and third and got my first podium. And I remember that so well because I called home to my mom and she said, how did it go? And yeah, it went okay. I'm lying third in the World Championship, and she's like, that's good, but I'm so glad that you didn't crash, So she didn't actually care about the results. She was just happy that I didn't hurt myself. So that was a good start to the season. Of course, at that point, was just start doing a lot more physical work, and that was my first kind of test of how much do I have to do to be on this level for 12 or 15 rounds of the World Championship. And it slowly went downhill from there. I got a couple of podiums. I did 11 overall my first year, which you can say was not bad at all. To finish 11 in the World Championship the first year and what you do. But it was a little bit disappointing going and do so well from the beginning, and then slowly it went downhill and just got a couple of top 10s or top 7 or whatever, but I probably set the bar a little bit too high in the beginning. So, but it was a great start of my career, and something that I remember looking back on, and very blessed and very appreciated by Rob Hooper.
You stayed in the UK then and switched to Honda with Dave Thorpe. I always remember the black Axo gear that year.
Yeah.
The team and the looked really good, but it seemed a bit up and down, your results in the World Championship, at least anyway, although the British Championship seemed strong. What were your memories of that season?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a difficult season. We had some issues with the bikes that keep making strange problems. So I had quite a few DNF in the World Championship, and I just never seemed to get that momentum going, so it's not a year that I'm looking back on very successful, how can you say, result wise. But it was a great experience, and I learned a lot, from that year as well. And working with Dave, and later on I got Keith as a mechanic. It was a good experience, and I learned a lot. But decided in the end of 1997 to go back to Rob again. So me and Jamie Dobb kind of switched places, Yeah. So and 98 was one of the best seasons in the 125 World Championship, so that was a good choice for me.
Were you able to learn a lot from Dave, even in terms of mentality? And he was obviously very successful, won world titles, knew how to deal with pressure and expectation, or did he talk to you about that sort of thing? Was it more lines, or did he just leave you to do your thing? How did that compare to Rob Hooper?
Well, obviously, Dave, the result speaks for itself, and Rob also had a lot to offer regarding good advices on the track or whatever. But I think with Dave, I think he left a lot just to ourselves, because I think the meaning and everything, even if you have been successful, we are so individual, and the way that he done his success in his career probably will not be the same way that I will do it, but I've always been very good at listening to people, and take people advice, and then also to define which kind of things that will work out for me, because even if I didn't have a lot of experience about how to train, I kind of also had to find out what do I feel happy with, how much effort do I have to put in, and how do my body react to all this training, so in general, it was a good experience working with someone that's always already have been a world champion. So and I think you always have to be humble and learn, and then you just have to be smart and think, what can I use in terms of his advice. So
that 1998 season really seemed to take you to another level. What happened that year? Was there anything special? Did you gel with the bike, or did you just feel more comfortable in the surroundings on the World Championship, because you were really a top contender in the World Championship that season?
Yeah. I think I just learned, I learned very quickly of how much to train, when to do it, and how to do it. And we got a little bit more clever on the bike, and how we could perform better, with the engine, and, Dep Pipes was helping us a lot with and we got a small help from Sylvain Gebors, which was the main factory Suzuki 250 team. So just small parts and thing made a huge difference. And of course, also then it was my third season as a professional, and I knew how to train a little bit more, and I knew how to deal with the pressure, and you become not only a number, but you actually become a person in the World Championship. And then you start gaining confidence, the riders what kind of mental game they're trying to play on you, and then you try to work out your own plan and your own mentality of how to play that game. So that year, I believe I got 6 or 7 individual podiums or heat race podiums, and my last round of the World Championship was believe also in Germany, maybe. I think it was in Germany. And I dislocated my shoulder the week before, and I remember I was like in 8th place, and I came down, and I didn't know it. I could actually ride that race because I had so much pain in my shoulder. So I qualified 20th, and took the whole shot of the Bob Motors and finished 3rd. And I've done that in a couple of times of my career, and that will lead to a little bit later story. I will tell you the same thing. I don't know what it is with me when I'm not been able to train or something. I come back and I just completely come back as another rider. So instead of being 8 in the World Championship, I finished 6 in the World Championship, and that was a good way to end the season. And I already actually signed a contract with Rob for the 99 season to do 125 World Championship. But suddenly something happened, and not to go too much into details, but I was kind of a little bit forced to go to the World Championship 250 with the factory. I got offered to ride for the factory 250 team, and looking back on it, that was not the right decision for me. But there was some political, you can say, terms that I just had to follow, and I went in to do something that I probably already knew that was not going to be very good for me. So that's basically what happened. So 98 was a great season, was my best season in 125, had many good podiums, good feeling with the bike. And then I went up to the 250 class, started to work with a professional trainer in Lommel, near Lommel. And it just was very difficult year for me, because I was kind of coming in as a you can say 3-year contract, but only with 1-year contract to begin with 2 years option. So the whole term of me moving from the 125 to the 250 main factory Suzuki was to learn a lot about testing and working with the Japanese, and suddenly you have, with Rob was quite simple. You would have this engine, we have that suspension, and then it's just like, how much do you want to turn the throttle? It was quite simple. This is what we have, and this is what we ride with. And then you come in and sign your first factory deal with Suzuki factory, which was one of the most successful team at that time. And then you have everything as an option, which was very difficult when you're standing there and you think, so what do you want? It's like, what can I get? Yeah, you can get everything. It's like, but let's get a starting point. So 99 season was an experience that I was not mature enough to take at that point. So I basically came in as a learning year rider, no pressure. There was Leon Gispers, there was Joshua Coppens, being my teammates. So they had to do the pool of the team, and I just had to learn a lot, and hopefully I learned quickly. But before the season started already, we sat down and they said, that we said to you that this is your learning year, but you have done so well in all the preseason races, which we had Bouquet, and we had different races with all the best riders in the world in the 250 class. And I was always consistent, like top 3 or top 4, riding with those riders. So I learned the process really quickly. And when we went out testing with other riders, like with Dunlop or something like that, I was always as fast as Pit Bayer and Barwoods, which already finished 2nd in the world, So they kind of changed their strategy towards me, and they said, I think we're going to put all effort in for you to be a world champion this year. And I was like, what? That was not a pressure that I was used to. And I was also not used to the pressure of riding, with a team that 100% only focus about winning, With Rob, you cannot say it was for fun, but it was like kind of a family team. We had a lot of fun, and we just went out ride and just have fun, and then we came home with a great result. It was great. If we don't, then it was also great. Yeah. We tried our best. But when you sign a professional contract, it's a different ball game. You're hired to win, world championships for a manufacturer, And for me, I was just not ready to deal with that.
And that championship was really stacked. David Villemin, Barra, Bavorts, Bale obviously won it. Everts was supposed to be there. He got injured. He came back and was fast at the end of the season. A whole load of other guys. So it wasn't an easy. It wasn't like it was a weak year to go to the 250 class. It was a very, very deep field. And I always remember you always seem to be in a crash as well. Nothing seemed to go right to allow you to get momentum to even build confidence.
Yeah. No, it was true. And, like I said, it was the first year that I worked with a trainer, and I worked, day-to-day basis, with Joel Smith, Pichon later on, and Joshua Coppins, and people that done a lot of training for so many years. And this was my first year working with a coach, which, we were doing training all together. And my condition was just not good enough, not because I didn't want to train or wanted to do enough, but I just didn't have any know-how, how much, more that I have to train to be on that level, riding with the best riders in the world. So you can say my condition went from being pretty good to actually pretty much downhill, because when you overtrained all the time, I showed up to the races being completely, out of energy. So So that was difficult, with dealing with all that pressure and then being really tired. I remember there was, I was living alone, and to be given this chance as the first factory rider from Denmark ever to ride on a factory team, I just want to train, eat, and sleep, and I didn't have anything. I didn't even have a TV where I was living. But you also soon find out that racing and performing on your highest level is a lot more than just training and eating and sleeping. It's also about having socialized with other people and feeling good about what you do. Mm-hmm. And it became too much of a kind of a job with no fun,
Okay.
And I kind of realized that towards the end of the season that, I cannot be a robot, just waking up, train, go for lunch, train again in the afternoon, and just, I also need to have fun and socialize myself with other people, and remember who I am as a rider. We see today racing like Hurlings is doing this and Caroli is doing that, and there's so many ways of winning a world championship. There's not one way, and you have to find, it's your responsibility to find out, how am I going to perform on the highest level? What will that take? Because I can be a robot and just train a lot, but if I'm not happy, if I don't have fun, then you're not going to get results anyway. So that year was unfortunately a little bit of a bad timing for me, not to be able to perform on the level that the team wanted me to perform, not on what we agreed, but because we agreed like top 10 in the world would be great. And suddenly they changed my kind of goals, So that forced me that Pichon, he was riding for factory Honda in the US. He basically got told, you have to go home because something happened there. I don't have to comment on that. But basically, suddenly there was a ride that Suzuki took and said, okay, Brian is not performing the way and developing the way that we want him to do. So they actually threw me out of the team, which, I understand, because it's business, they're hiring rider that have to win. And then Pichon was a better option, so he came in and replaced me, and that left me with no ride left in the 250 class. So after that, I went back to the 125 again, which was a very bad decision for me when I look back at now. But yeah, that was my option at that point, and I was already quite a lot heavier. I was already like 79 kilos, and I was too heavy for that 125 because I trained so much to become stronger on riding a 250 and, a lot fitter and everything. And I signed my contract with 2000 and 2001 with Dixon, Steve Dixon team, back to the UK again.
Yeah, just on 2000, you obviously went back to the 125s, and you say, looking back at it now, maybe it wasn't the right decision, but you did get your first moto win, and then you stayed there for the year after. So and you were back racing the British Championship. Just how would you reflect on those 2 years? And obviously Steve Dixon is a very passionate man. What was it like working with him? It's quite hard to believe he's still got a world championship team.
Yeah, you know what? It was great to work with Steve, and you can say the decision to work with Steve was of course the most, you can say, clever thing was probably to stay in the 250 class, because now I learned how to ride a 250, and you know, it took me a long time to be able to have enough power to ride a 250, a factory bike. So going back to the 125. Was the consistency of being there every weekend, because if I had to make a good start with almost 80 kilos, I had to be more lucky than just good at starting, you know, because if you know, when I come over the gate and switch up to second gear, you know, to move, when you look back at it now, you know, to move like 80 kilo up to the first corner against like Willemin, which is like 45 kilo or whatever, that was Ron Carter and those people that I was racing with, was probably not the best thing. But you know what, I don't have any regrets. I learned a lot working with Steve, and you know, I won something else that was one big achievement. Like I had a moto win in the 125. I got British champion in 2001 on the 125. So if it was a bad decision, I cannot say. I don't live in regrets, but it was just maybe for my career, it was not the best decision, but that was the decision that I had to make, and got the best out of it, and had fun and learned a lot. And that put me in a different position, you know, for the future.
Yeah, and just on 2002, you obviously then made the switch to the 500. So you were making a big change from the 125 to the 500. That doesn't happen in the sport today, but you ended up 8th in the championship. So actually that was a decent season considering.
You know what, in my eyes, I won the world championship that year, because what I created with that Husqvarna, you know, it's not a Husqvarna like people say today, that's a part of the KTM. Basically, they made a new bike going from that big bike that Bartolini won the world championship, I believe maybe 2000 or 2001. I don't remember that, but that was a big handful. You know, it was 590 cc's, and the bike was so long that, you know, when I tested it, because we didn't have other bikes at that point, and just to land on the front wheel was already like a very difficult thing. It was so big to me to ride. So, you know, signing that contract, it was a funny story, because I actually signed a contract for the 500. One guy that later on in my life, later that year, became my manager. He kept coming and asking every day, you know, every GP, oh, Brian, we really would like to, one of my friends, he built his own bike, and that bike was called Versamati. It was an Italian brand. And first of all, I'm standing there, I never heard of that bike in my whole life. So, and you want me to move to the 500 class, going from 125? Are you crazy? Or, you know, 4 strokes? It was also something in my ears that you don't really understand that much at that time, you know? So, and I said, no, I don't want to ride a 500. And then next GP, he came back again. Hello, Brian, how are you? And I really want you to come and test this bike. And I was like, are you crazy? I just told you like 3 GPs in a row that, you know, I don't want to ride this bike, and I don't want to ride a 500. But as the season developed, and I could see also, like, I needed to change. You know, I couldn't go into a good team in the 250 class. So I thought I would actually like to try this 4-stroke. So I tell him, okay, I come to Italy next week. After the season, I decided I go to Italy and I test this stupid bike almost, you know. It's like I had this attitude, you know. So I came down to this factory, which was actually lying a little bit outside Monza near Milan, and met this very passionate people, and basically promised me like everything, you know. So basically it was this guy that he had a road racing team, and he wanted to go back to motocross. So my manager, which is the guy that organized all the transport for all the world championships for many, many years, Pierre Boltero, he said, you have to go with this Edu Racing and go and test this Versamati. He's going to be a factory team with Versamati, and he's going to live in Monza. That's where his team is. He normally works only with road racing, but he wants to go to motocross because that was his passion. Mm-hmm. So suddenly I had like a couple of really passionate people around me, you know, the guy that produces the bike in their own little workshop somewhere, and they already had Joel Smith with the yellow Versamati already before. Then they sold that product and it became VOR, VOR. I don't remember if you remember those bikes, but with Bellometti and some other riders. So I thought they must be able to make a good bike, you know. So the first time that I went out in end of 2001, I was like, I could feel the power was really nice, you know. It came immediately when you turn the throttle. There was quite a lot of problems, but they promised me, Brian, this bike that you ride now is gonna be nothing like you're gonna have. You're gonna have a full factory bike. It's gonna be 501 cc. This one was like 560 or 90. And you're gonna have a full factory bike with factory suspension, everything. And I was like, if they make all those changes, it could actually work pretty good for me, because I would like to stand up a lot more using my balance. And with the 4-stroke, you could change that. It allows you to change that kind of technique. So, so I actually signed the contract in, let's say, November, December. And then I went home and I was very motivated. I really wanted to, you know, to do something good, because it was kind of a family team, you know. And came back at the factory in the beginning of January, and I worked so hard during the winter. I was really fit. I was motivated, and I was like, "Come on, guys, let's do this," you know. And I remember stepping into the factory already when I did the pre-season testing. You know, when I came back from the second time when I signed the contract, which was in beginning of December, I took my own handlebar with me, because I'm very particular with my handlebar. I like, you know, to have my position good. And already then they said, no, you don't need that handlebar. So I said, well, I need that handlebar. You know, let's just make that clear, because I don't like to ride with a handlebar that goes down like this, you know. So already there we had a couple of arguments. And I thought, that's strange, they don't want me to change the handlebar. But I knew that that bike that I tested had this handlebar on. So when I came back in January, I looked at, there was standing like a stack of bikes, and I was looking in, and I was like, where's my factory bike? You know, it's just gonna be there, like completely prepped. We are ready to go, and let's do it. And I looked around, and like I couldn't really see anything. I couldn't see anything with my number. My number I knew already was 57. So I was like looking around, like. And I went back to the guys and I said, where's my bike? It's not completely ready yet. Yeah, but where's the bike that I rode? And he said, it's over there. And I went over, and my handlebars was like, it was a 997 rental, because I swear, you know, I always use rental for the whole of my life. And the handlebar was like twisted down. And I said, no, that's not, please tell me that's not my bike, because already the handlebars are completely broken. The front wheel is completely to the side. Yeah, we're gonna fix it. You know, you can start riding with that, and then you could get your factory bike. And I was like, okay, already a little bit disappointed. And we start testing. We didn't start testing. We start riding, and we did all January. And I didn't finish one moto more than I probably my longest moto by the whole of that month was 12 minutes. I remember. Otherwise, something broke, the engine, the gearbox, and I just coming back to the guy that hired me, because he was good friends with Vatamati, and he run the team, and I kept saying to him, you know, I sit down with heavy means. I said, you know, I cannot go on like this. You know, now it's like end of February is going to be the first Italian championship, and I haven't done a moto over 12 minutes yet. You know, so it doesn't matter how strong I am and how good physical work, because now I knew how to work hard and what to do, you know. So he said, yeah, but it's gonna be okay, Brian, no problem. And you know, let's go for a pizza. And we came into the middle of February, and I still haven't done a moto over like 10, 12 minutes. And still didn't receive my factory bike, still riding on that old bike. And one day I put so much pressure on the team, and I said, you know what, if we don't go out testing here in the weekend, because now there's only 1 week to the first Italian championship, then I'm just gonna find something else. You know, I don't care, because it's too difficult for me to keep being motivated and seeing that we cannot ride. So we went out one day, we then went out testing, and one bike broke the gearbox. Okay, take the second bike. Then I broke the valve on the bike. And then the third bike was the factory bike. So I went over a jump and the chain fell off. And I was like, surely that haven't, happened since I rode on a putsch when I was, 6 years old, when the swing arm just was so loose, So I said to mechanic, because I had mechanics which was actually road racing mechanics, and they didn't have a clue. Honestly, it was unreal. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna do up the chain, because the wheel must be, the chain, the tied up the chain must be completely wrong. So I sit down and was millimeter from each side and make sure the wheel was completely straight and the chain was completely straight. Went over the ski jump and the chain fell off again. And I was like, okay, now I'm gonna look stupid walking back, because I already said to the mechanics, I said, can you not if you cannot even tie up a chain to make sure it doesn't fall off, then I don't know what we're gonna do in 1 week, So, and now I came walking back and the mechanic was just laughing at me, and I was so mad. So then I find out what is wrong with this, because it cannot be right that you can lose a chain, It never happened since, like I was 5-6 years old. So what had happened, I had like a little rental sticker over the swing arm. So I could see that was kind of ripped apart. So I took the sticker off, and the rear swing arm have just snapped completely. So that's why when I landed, the whole thing. And I said, you know what? Then I had 3 bikes standing there, and I said to the guy from Edo Racing, I said, you know what? I'm out of here. I cannot take anymore. Fucking next weekend, I'm going to be racing with the best guys in the world. It's like Stefan Evers, Joel Smith, the 500 class. And I don't even have a bike. So in that week, what happened, we called up Husqvarna, and that just went bankrupt, basically, in Varese, where they had the factory. So we called up then and said, you know what, you have Pusa, you have Johnny Linde. Pusa was on a 125 Husqvarna. Johnny Linde was on a 500. Did really good season the year before. He finished 5th in the world the year before. He was Swedish. I knew him a little bit. And I said, you know what, we're going to take care of all the transportation for Pusa and Linde if you give Brian like 2 bikes to ride on. And that's why they made this new bike, 450, because otherwise they were like those big bikes, So I went out testing that on Tuesday, just a stock bike. It was not even a new bike. It was just something that they had, I just let him ride this, So I went out on that, and I was together with Johnny Linde, which, we did some riding together, and I was consistently like 3-4 seconds a lap faster. It was just on a stock bike. And he had the factory bike as well. So he was getting really pissed off, and he was looking at, why does Brian, how can it be so much faster? And then he said, let me ride my old bike and then test against Brian. And then, because he didn't like the 450, he liked that big bike because he was quite a tall guy, and he liked a lot of power. And I didn't like a lot of power because I came from the 125, so I just needed to ride it flat out and be in control. So he went out testing with his old bike, and he was still like 4 or 5 seconds too slow compared to me. So then we went to this race. We went to the first Italian championship. Only had 2 practice on this new bike, Husqvarna. And I believe I finished 3rd or 4th at the first Italian round, just on this stock bike. And I remember, Everts won, Bearwoods was 2nd, and I believe it was me 3rd, and then it was Joshua Coppins 4th. So that was like a great success, and that year was a completely turnaround in my life, because I didn't have a lot to work with, no matter what. The company was already gone bankrupt, so we didn't have a lot of bikes. I just had a stock bike. I tried to convince the factory to take the electric start off, because the bike was basically 122 kilo, and on a dyno jet. And I know that Paul Cooper's mechanic tested that the year before, or the year after, and he said it had 46 horsepower, and I had 122 kilos. So on a 500 or 450 against, Stefan Everts, Joel Smith on those, I believe there was rumors about Everts 450 was like a 490, and Joel Smith was riding on a 550 or whatever they say, So, but that was a very successful year. I rode, you can say I rode the shit out of that bike every single time. And instead of coming in, and the team was like, you know, they were like congratulating me for finish the race on that bike, you know, because when I rode it as aggressive as I could, you know, there was heating up the engine. So the hydraulic clutch went after like 15 minutes. And then I, of course, had to use the rear brake a little bit more. And then that went after 20 minutes. So then I had no rear brake. And then I learned how to use the front brake a little bit more and roll into the corners. And, you know, I was just happy for what I had, you know, and it changed really my mentality that year, that, you know, you've been a factory rider, you know, you go back to 125 and didn't have 2 great years. And then suddenly you come in this team where people are they're just smiling that you actually finished the race and you're like, you didn't die, you know. So it was kind of a game changer for me as well, even if I wanted to have more and you know, to work with the bike. And but with the Husqvarna didn't have any money and they didn't have any budget, so we kind of just had to get the best out of what we had, and that worked out really good for me.
Then you moved 03, the creation of that MXGP class. You moved to Honda, and that was maybe your best, or at least one of your best seasons. 4th overall. The class was stacked because it had all the best from the 2 main classes in it. Four podiums, I think. How do you describe that year? That was again another big step for you. You were one of the leading contenders amongst some legendary names with Everett, Smets, Pichon, and all those guys.
You know what? It was a very new beginning of my racing career, because basically after 2002 season, I finished 8th in the world. Nearly had my first podium in Germany, and had a couple of good battles with the best riders that I knew that I had to race with maybe the season after. And I got a couple of different offers to stay in the 500, but because I knew and I heard rumors about this MXGP class, and now they want to do it more like a Formula One kind of structure where all the best riders in the world, I was thinking, well, hang on a minute, you know, I could maybe go here and be successful, maybe even get a KTM ride for the following year together with Demaria. And I was working a little bit on that deal, but then I kind of thought, you know, if I want to be successful and everything what I have worked for from the beginning to now, I want to make damn sure that, you know, if I finish top 5 in the world, I want to finish with the best riders that is available, you know, because that was more like a status for me. You know, I worked very hard. I learned a lot over the years. I learned everything myself. I've never been on a training school in my life. And I had a lot of good people that I can thank through my career. But I kind of learned as going, you know, learning by doing. So I kind of decided, you know, and then I got this contact with Honda Martin, and they wanted to go for me to go and test the bike just before the last round of the World Championship in Russia in 2002. And I asked the team, I said, can I go and ride this Honda? And I was in Mantova, I remember meeting the team the week before. And I put my legs around that Honda, already 2003 bike. And I couldn't believe it, you know, that was just, that was just a game changer, you know. I thought, okay, that would be the same of sitting on the start line on a Fiat 500 and then getting a Ferrari, you know, a Formula One car, you know. It was just unreal. It had power, it could turn, it had reliability, and it was just a cool bike, you know. And the team and everything, you know, I got such a good connection with them already at the first test. You know, I rode the whole day. You know, they said, we're just going to do a little bit of testing because on Friday, I'm going to fly off to Russia. The team already left from Monday because it was such a trip to go to Russia to do the last World Championship, my team. So I went out on a Wednesday or Thursday to test this Honda to see if I will sign the contract. And I basically just rode all day, and I was riding and riding and riding. And in the end, I ended up with a massive crash. I split my thighs, with the muscles in my thighs completely all the way up, and couldn't go to Russia to race. So the team was not too impressed with that decision, but I just loved that bike. I really find out that what it was all about, riding a 4-stroke, you know, that could actually hack power. And I believe, I don't know the Honda now, but for a long time, probably one of the best bikes they ever made, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just so happy. I signed that contract straight away. You know, I couldn't wait, and I got healed up with my leg. I decided to stay in Italy, and basically had like a really good season preparing. You know, I had a good feeling with Marco, with Henrico, my mechanic, and the people around the team. There was Marcus, which is now the team coordinator in factory Honda as well, was my mechanic back 2004, and just a great way to kind of reset my career, and you know, had all the appreciation from the year before with the 4-stroke and the team not being very organized, didn't have good bikes, and then coming in with a good bike and a good team that had already been successful in the World Championship in the 90s, you know. So that year, I remember one of the things that I take also on my schools when I teach other people is the mentality of the coach and not being able to put a lot of pressure, because we, you know, as a rider, you put a lot of pressure on yourself. You don't actually need to have someone saying that you have to go out and win, because there's nothing more than an athlete when he works like 4, 5, 6 hours a day, take, you know, daily risk to be better at what you're doing. There's nothing more that we want to do is just winning. You know, that's all we think about. You know, every single day is just about winning and want to be the best. So there's already a lot of pressure when you think about that. So the team around you is really important, that they just keep doing their thing to be able for me to do the best performance as possible. So remember the kind of transaction of coming into my first 99 factory Suzuki team, where, you know, it seems like second or third or whatever was never good enough. You know, there was a lot of pressure, and I couldn't cope with that. Where I remember walking down to my first race in Bellpuig in Spain for the first World Championship, 2003, with Honda Martin, and he walked down with me to the pit, and he stopped me and he said, "Brian," I said, "What?" He said, "Just go out and get a couple of points." And I looked at him and was like, "What do you mean?" "Yeah, just go out and see if you can get a couple of points." He said, "Fucking, I qualified like 4th, you know that, yeah? So of course I'm gonna get points." He said, "No problem. You can do whatever you want. I'm just telling you, Joe, go out and just see if you can get a couple of points." I would look at him as like, I don't know what he's talking about. You know, of course I'm gonna get points. When you qualified 4th or 5th, you know, I'm gonna be right there. So I remember the approach to the racing that Paulo had was completely reversed to what I had before, with a factory team. Now Paulo Martin was not a factory team, but we was a little bit supported, and probably one of the teams where you will think Honda will come back to and support for the future. So I can remember went off the start line, and just basically I really learned how to start in that 4-stroke, and it suited my style perfectly. I was so confident, and I was just riding around like in 5th, 6th place, and I was just tootling around thinking, you know, what should I do here? Should I try to push towards the front, or will it start going faster? Because now you were stacked with so many good riders in the World Championship, and you know, it was this MXGP class or whatever they call it, MX1. So I was thinking like, I have to wait a little bit, because probably they're gonna go past me in the next couple of minutes, you know. So I was just kind of riding around and just looking and, you know, see what I could do. And then I fell back to 7th place, and I kind of got into a rhythm where I thought, this is not, I can do a lot better. So when I got like 10 minutes to go of that race, I was in 7th place. And I just thought, well, I almost thought like, fuck it, you know. I just turned the throttle, and I went up and got 5th in that race. And that was only when a one moto schedule, you know.
Yeah.
So came first, you know, I came 5th in that first race, and it kind of just got a really good, you know, feeling with the team, and I didn't have any pressure, and you know, I didn't feel it was difficult for me to aim for this speed. So I remember like mentally, I kind of went on to the next round and I got 5th there as well. And then it was the sand in so I kind of always had to convince myself that, that I was good enough to stay here, like riding with the best rider in the world, having looked up to like Joel Smith and Stefan Everts and Pete Byra and whatever the riders was. And suddenly they were there on my side, and suddenly I was one of those guys that could maybe beat them one day,
Mm-hmm.
So it took me, 4 or 6 races to get going. I was consistently top 5. I lost a lot of points in Lerup in the deep sand because my tire came off the rim. Because when they put the bike on, or the tire on with the Moose, they broke one of the wires in the tire. So it started off a little bit bad in Lerup. I dislocated my shoulder in time practice, but was determined to go on because I was lying 6th in the world championship at that moment. And so I went out, did the race, and went from last in the start because when I let go of the clutch, the wheel was just spinning inside the rim because there was no tire lock on. So finally the tire came off and it was a very devastating moment because I knew I had, my shoulder been out. I was riding with a lot of pain and had to do a lot of injections to make that race. And then after like 25 minutes, going from last to 9th place in 25 minutes, I had to give up because the tire fell off the rim. So I lost so many points there, which, at the end of the season, you can say that I was really missing towards finish top 3 in the world. But overall, it was an incredible season. I, remember coming into my first podium race in Bulgaria. We started working with the bike, and I didn't want them to do a lot with the bike. I was already happy enough for what I had, compared to the team for the year before. But then we started working a little bit, and I actually started believing that I could maybe, actually maybe get a podium. I felt I had the speed. My qualifying was start getting good. In Teutzenthal in 2003, I was lying, top 3 for a long time, and then I felt a little bit back and finished top 5 again. And I thought, okay, now I raced with the best for, was 2nd, 3rd. I should be able to keep it there, So in Bulgaria, I qualified 3rd, I think, and then I got into like, I think it was 2nd or 1st after a couple laps, and I was leading for a couple laps, and it was so hot there. And I was kind of in a moment where I think, where is everyone? I had like a 5 or 6 second gap, and it was like 40 degrees plus. And I think, why is not everyone like riding good and aggressive and like I did? But I thought, why is nobody pushing? And then like 20 minutes or 25 minutes into the race, I just feel like someone just hit me with a big, swing or something. I was like, I started losing concentration because I started dehydrating. And then Evers passed me, and then Smits came up behind me, and it was a kind of a funny story with him because in Teutzenthal, he, one guy one fan, I don't remember who he was, but he always gave me a video like after the, the race or the weekend after, So between Teutzenthal, we had another race, and then we had Bulgaria. So I was watching this tape and I'm watching the interview after the race. And what basically Joel Smith, he said is like, I was holding him back for being, able to pass Stefan Everts. And he didn't even remember, he didn't even know my name or my number. He just kind of put me out there as there was one guy there, he shouldn't belong here, but, he was just holding me back and he was switching from side to side. And I remember thinking, fuck you. You were one of my hero. I'm going to fucking beat you one day, that's for sure. And especially when you don't know my name or my number. So I'm going to make sure that you're going to remember that name and also my number. So in Teutzenthal, in Bulgaria, I was in that situation because I knew that Smets was really strong. He was really fit. And when we came into like a 4 laps before the finish, I thought, okay, now I have to make a decision. Either I ride over my head and I will not get that podium because I was lying in 2nd place, or I will back down a little bit and just, be happy with that podium. And then the lap after I saw it was Joel Smith, and I thought, fuck you. As you know, rather die than losing to you, especially after what he said about me. And I remember having a Karpovich poster down in my garage in Italy where I did some spinning cycling, and I wrote on that poster, "Fuck you, I'm gonna beat you one day." And every time I was cycling, I was just looking at that poster and those words, you know. So now I was in that moment. I did a lot of visualization before racing. You know, that's one big part of my life is always to visualize what I do. You know, and there's something I also teach other riders. Visualization would bring you to a position in your life where you feel that you have been there before, and now you can actually do it because you have already seen yourself. I'm gonna beat you one day. You know. So suddenly I was in that position. You know, I knew that he was breathing down my neck, and I knew that I probably had to go over that limit to get that podium or to beat him. So I remember that he came a little bit closer, and then he passed me. And then we went back down towards the finish in Bulgaria, and there was a massive tabletop. It was actually also the year where Pete Beyer crashed, which, you know, it was a bittersweet feeling after the race. But we were jumping on that jump, and you know, Joel Smith had a lot of determination. He had a lot of condition, but he was not the biggest jumper in the world, you know. I respect him a lot, though. But then I passed him, doing a little bit of, in that time, what, scrubbing or jumping, you know. So I passed him. So, and I was looking at him in the air because that tabletop was like 45 meter plus, you know. So I had time to look at him, and he looked at me, and I knew that the next corner is going to be a left-hand corner past the mechanic area. So I thought, okay, so what we're going to do here, he was here, and I passed him slowly because I was scrubbing in there. So I was actually on the inside. So I thought, okay, now it's the time to show you my number, and maybe you can remember also my name after. So as soon as he came into that, I kind of outbraked him a little bit. And as soon as he started to turn, I just went straight, and I just hit him so hard. And I remember hitting him, and I thought, ooh, now I need to go away because you don't really fuck with Joel Smith. So I thought, so I did that moment, which was a great thing for me to do, also to put my respect to him, because when I came into the World Championship MX1, you know, there was Bearwoods, there was Smets, there was Everts, there were so many good Belgium riders. Actually, the 40 was the Belgium Championship, but unfortunately it was the World Championship, you know, where other people also tried to win a World Championship. So you kind of had to earn your respect towards the riders. So I thought, I'm really going to set him straight. You know, I'm not just a little pretty boy from Denmark that just want to be here because I would like to be a number in the game. I like to go here and to be able to win a World Championship. So when I turned there and I hit him, you know, I got a little bit of a gap, and the next lap we come around, there was 3 laps to go, and I was on my limit. You know, I was so dehydrated that my visions become blurry. And he came close to me, and I kind of opened the door, and I kind of let him pass because I knew that, okay, at least I showed you that maybe you remember my name and number. So that was my first podium, and of course that was in the same time a little bit devastating of one of my heroes crashing on the track, and seeing him lying there. And I actually had time to reflect I remember that when I saw him lying on the ground, Pete Beyer, you know, remember seeing his legs was lying across each other. And I remember thinking, even if I was in a huddle battle in my life, you know, I remember thinking, if those legs are still cross-rotted, you know, the next time they come around, for sure he's not well. Because the first time I ever saw him racing was in 1994 in the 125 when I did that last race after my title. And I remember seeing this guy, and my jaw just dropped to the floor because he was just hanging it out, you know, like all over the place, almost going up the bar. And he was just wide open. And I think, fuck, you know, if that guy is not crashing in those, we had 3 heats that time. It was 3 times 25 minutes plus 3 laps in 94. I thought it's amazing if that guy doesn't crash, you know. So you kind of already had in the back of your mind, unfortunately, that, you know, you never wish anyone to get hurt in the sport, but you kind of think, fuck, if he gets away with, you know, with all that, it's amazing because he was on the limit. So So it was difficult to celebrate at the same time that someone that you know and was your hero and then became a competitor and someone that you respect a lot was getting hurt. But so I decided to not celebrate, but just more of a thought of him and kind of dedicated my first podium to him, you know. So moving on in that season, I had many great races, and I consistently, I believe, became like second or third all the time. I think I was never off the podium after that one podium. So it also says something about the mindset of a racer. You know, we are struggling. We are wanted to believe. We want to be the best, and once you have done it, you know, you just know, okay, now I actually know how to do it. You know, and it also put a lot of pressure on you, because now people expect that you can go podium the weekend after again. But I was never actually off the podium, and I remember going into that last race at Ernée. It was probably the first time in my career where I had the privilege to be sitting behind the gate and thinking, it's not about if I'm going to get a podium today, it's just if I'm going to be first, second, or third, you know. Mm-hmm. And that was a great feeling to have so much confidence to just know that, you know, even if I made a top 6 start, I just kept plugging everyone away. And I remember going into second place. Everts had like a 16-second lead, and I closed that down to like 3 seconds, you know. So that was almost a win for me, and it was a great way to finish the season, to keep me working really hard, because I learned how to work hard. I learned how to realize that my talent was not enough to win a world championship. You know, you have to have a lot of other ingredients to be able to do it. So now I felt it was kind of 2003, the end of that season was kind of where I put the whole parcel together. You know, I could, you know, finish 4th in the world. I believe I was not that many points off Pichon for 3rd, because he got injured and I lost that tire, but I was not that many points off. So going into the 2004 season, I mean, there was no doubt in my mind, and there was a good relief in my personal developing mentally also, that I deserved to be up there, and I proven to everyone that I had the capability of doing it.
That year you won your first Grand Prix, but did you get injured at the end of that season? Because there was quite a lot of non-point scores. I think you ended up 8th in the championship, but how was it to finally win a Grand Prix, and especially in that class, because that was the toughest class of all?
Yeah, you know what, that was a very, very strange season. Like I said, going off season 2003, I went on a small holiday, and then I just get back to work again. And I decided to go to Florida in the US to do my preseason training. So I got the bike flown over to Orlando, and I did all my training there. You know, I was away from all the talking and, you know, everything else. So I just trained on my own there. I never had a problem with racing against myself or being motivated to be able to work hard doing physical training. So I kind of worked quite good on my own, and, you know, I set always up like all kinds of obstacles for myself when I was racing against the lap board, you know, like ghost riders of that could be even Smets or Everts or Pichon, and I just always imagine me going inside when he went outside, and that's how I learned how to race on the limit with just my own. You know, I didn't need a lot of people around me. So I went over there, was really good off season. I did a lot of training. Orlando was a little bit more soft than most people went to California. But here we were riding on soft track, bumpy tracks, and I really kind of like that. And then I went to Mantova and had a really good preseason races. Was, I would say, probably the shape of my life, you know, physical shape, but also shape mentally. And I knew what to do. I had a good team behind me. We got, you know, a little bit of factory support from Honda HRC. We got even better suspension to work with Showa at that time. So I, you know, my team was ready to win a world championship, and I felt I was ready as well. And then a couple of weeks before the Grand Prix, we went testing with a new ignition, and unfortunately that ended up with a massive crash. The ignition actually just failed on a big jump.
Okay.
And I fell down on my head and my neck and everything. So, and I hurt my left hand. So I didn't really know what the consequences will be of that. So I stayed off the bike for a couple of days. This was like Tuesday, and I didn't ride the bike Tuesday, or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then I went out Sunday riding. And when I started riding, I was like, everything is okay. You know, I feel okay in my head, and I was so lucky to walk away from that. But when I got like 20 minutes into the motor, my left arm started sleeping. You know, so I couldn't really feel the clutch anymore. And I thought, I went to the physio. I thought, maybe it's just a little nerve that is trapped, because I had quite a hard hit on my neck. So we worked on the shoulder and, you know, my neck and everything, and went another 2 times riding, and it was the same. My arm started sleeping on the left side. So I didn't basically told everyone, you know, or anyone, because you can imagine doing all that hard work and feeling that if this was a possibility that you could win a world championship, it could be that year, you know. That was my dream anyway. So I didn't actually tell anyone about it. I didn't tell the press or anything. So I went into to Zolder, and I believe I was in like 3rd or 4th place, and I was riding really bad. And after 20 minutes, I start getting this funny like cramp and arm pump and no feeling in my left arm. But everyone kept crashing in front of me. So I kind of ended up in 2nd place or 3rd, I believe, in the first moto. And people were like, yeah, that was really good. But I knew inside that it was not because I was riding good. It was just because a lot of people made mistakes and fell over. And I knew there was a problem with that arm. So went into the 2nd moto, was not so good, I believe, maybe 7 or something like that. Went to Belputs, which was one of my favorite tracks, and there was a lot of rain came down, and I was never like especially in the mud, but when there was deep ruts and there was a lot of firm underneath and there was a lot of grip, I of course could use my balance of my riding style standing on the foot pegs, you know. So I remember hole shotting that motor, which I have some great pictures of already, like wheeling down the start straight, just getting into the front, and I was leading that motor for like 20 minutes, and then I started getting this feeling in my left arm. But because there was so deep ruts and the speed was quite low, I could just like kind of, you know, ride a little tension on the handlebar, and I managed to finish 2nd in that motor. No, I was lying 2nd into the last lap, but the gear lever went through the engine and lost all the oil, and the bike seized up. So I didn't score any points in that motor. And then the 2nd motor, I had to ride my practice bike, and I did a hole shot again and finished 2nd in that motor, with a bike which was completely different, because we just received a new gearbox and there was a lot longer 2nd gear. And that's why I felt so great when I went out of the gate, because I could just like drag that power on for so long before I had to switch gear. So now I had to go on my spare bike, which I have never rode. And I was thinking, how did that work now, you know? Went out again and still got that whole shot just wheeling down the start. So I thought, okay, fuck it. So and after that we went to Portugal, and that's where it started really being a lot of problem. I couldn't sleep at the night because I had such a big problem with the nerve in my hand, because it'd been squashed after that crash. So I said to the team, you know, we have to make operation. I went in for some from check, and it showed out the carpal tunnel, because the nerve and the hand had such a hard compression. It kept making a lot of inflammation where the nerve is going through the carpal tunnel. So they had to open up my hand and then like clear that tunnel, so the nerve had possibility to expand. So, but when the guy, he opened up my hand, he had to cut quite a lot of the small ligaments away, because my ligaments, you can say, were like, he said it was 7 times thicker than normal people, because this is the clutch side. So I was really strong in that hand, you know, taking the clutch since I was 4 years old. So the tendon and the ligaments are building up so strong that actually also there was not much space for the nerve. So that made me sit out for Falkensvart. There was one weekend off after Portugal, and then there was Valkenswaard, and then Teutzenthal. So I made the operation on Tuesday after Portugal, and basically just had to see when I could come back racing again. And that moment was just, devastating for me, because I knew that I was ready for the season, and I knew, I'd done everything in my possibly way to be able to be the best that year, and I knew how to do it, and I had a lot of confidence in myself. So it was really difficult to kind of realize that, I'm not gonna lose a round of the World Championship and then come back winning the World Championship. It's just not possible, and especially not when there's a guy in there that's called Stefan Everts, which consistently was not much worse than a 4th place, So I stayed 3 weeks away from the bike, and had a lot of time to think, and had a lot of time to reset my mind, and thinking, okay, so how is it gonna be when I come back? What is my strategies gonna be? And I thought, what, I just have to go and do each race moto as good as I can, and just get the many point, and then hopefully build up towards getting a podium again, and then do the best of the season. So I went out practicing the Thursday before, and then they took the stitches off my hand, and the doctor said, I don't think it's a good idea that you're gonna ride, but maybe it's gonna jump up because we take the stitches out. So I said, okay, but just take most of the stitches out and leave 2 of the stitches there. So at least, I'm not going to be bleeding to death if something happens, So, and then I had my own doctor with me. So I left it another day, and then Saturday morning, we took the last stitches out, and I went out for practicing in Teutzenthal, and I was like, I was so excited, because I haven't ridden the motorcycle for such a long time, and I went out and I qualified 4th, I think, 4th or 3rd or 4th. And I was like, that was all right, but still, now we had to do those 2 motos of 35 minutes plus 2 laps. So let's not get too excited, And I went out of the gate, and I was 2nd behind Stripers, and I went straight into the lead, and I just pushed for the first, I had a kind of a strategy. If I get in a good position, I would just push the first 7 laps, and then try to stay in the front as long as I can. And then after like 7-8 laps, I had like a 5 or 6 second gap, and I thought, that's okay, and boom. Then you go in, and suddenly there's like 10 minutes left, and you start getting tired, and you think, fuck it, just one more lap, So I start thinking just one more lap, and just looking at my lap times, and then I 2 laps to go, and I thought, fuck, I'm hanging, but I can hold on for 2 more laps, And then I won that first moto, and it was just like, how did that happen, And then I remember, like, everyone was excited, because it was my first Grand Prix win in the World Championship in the major class, and my mom was there as well, and her boyfriend, and there was a lot of friends, and I actually didn't call my mom until like Thursday afternoon when I tested the bike. I said, could you please come to Toyota, because she haven't seen me race this year so far, because of the distance to the other races. So I said, please come down. I will book the hotel and get everything ready. Just come down and watch me doing that race. And it was a very sentimental, moment for me, like, because of everything that happened, in my career, and the whole, how can I say, the whole experience with losing my dad, and had to kind of struggle for a lot of years, and come from, convincing myself that, I can still do it, even if I don't have, my dad there, but I had a lot of other good people around me. So to come and go out in the second moto and do exactly the same thing as I did and a lot of people wanted to get in contact me with, the media and everything. And I was just like, I'm just going to go down to my camper. I'm just going to do my cycling and do my routines, which I always did. And don't think about that I went out and just won the first race, I'm just going to go out and just focus and try to do as good race as I can in the second moto. So I went out on the sighting lap, and I felt really, really good. And I just whole shotted that second moto, and I just thought, fuck, here we go again, It's like, let's have some fun. So I came on the big the biggest tabletop just opposite the start there, and I threw the bike completely sideways, and I just took a tear off, and I thought, here we go, let's do 18 laps and just have some fun. And it came down to the wire in the last 2 laps because it started raining and Everett slowly started closing in. And I remember it so well because I was just looking at the lap board, and it was just closing down a couple of hundredths of a second per lap, but he was just slowly just picking me and eating me in. So I won that race by 100th of a second, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But it was yeah, in my racing career, and it was definitely one of the biggest moment of my life, next to, you can say, when I won my first European championship. It was a great achievement for myself, and it's something that I will always remember back on, because of not so much the result, but well, the result, of course, it's great, but actually the trip and the travel to get there, what I had to do to get that final achievement, of my career, you can say, in many ways. It was just amazing, and I could be proud of. I had a lot of good people around me, which I cannot be thankful enough. But I can also say that I learned everything on my own, and I had to dig really deep sometimes, and I really had to reflect a lot on my own personality and not feel sorry for myself because I lost my dad. And it was a constant battle against myself, and it was a great achievement for me, but I believe also that he looked down and he was proud of what I have achieved, and that was a great moment for me.
Did it make everything then just feel worth it? It sort of satisfied all that effort you'd put in, and was it a weight off your shoulders to finally do that?
You know what, it is a funny, because I had that question quite often asked me, and I asked my question that to myself as well. I will reflect that moment as being a business, running a business, and you get your first big order in, and you think, thank God, this month we're gonna be okay. And then before you put your arms up and you think, what a successful month this has been, you're thinking, well, what about the next month? How is that going to work? So when I was actually on the podium, and that's probably a little bit of the personality that also drove me and drive me in that direction to keep. I think most people would probably have gave up along the way. Even Stefan Everett said to me when I finished my career, he said, Brian, one thing I can assure you, when I see your career and everything that you have gone through, with small injuries and, things that happens, I would probably have stopped a long time ago, and when I won that Teutenthal, he said, I couldn't catch you, so it was great, a compliment for me to see another rider which was a lot better than me, won a lot, won 10 world championships, also looking at me thinking, yeah, you fucking, when you retired, if you retire, you have definitely done your best. So that moment when I win that race, it was just amazing. It was a great achievement, and I was standing down the podium, was really happy, but just before I put the trophy up in the air and think I'm gonna celebrate, I'm thinking, fuck, now I've proven to everyone that I can do it. Now we're gonna do it again next weekend, and so it's a great feeling. But if I could learn anything from how I was at that time to how I am today, I would probably have thought, I should have celebrated a lot more. I constantly went back and, we had a little bit of celebration with the team. And then Monday I went to Lommel, and we started riding that week, and, just hammering myself because I couldn't understand how I could train so hard all my life. And then I didn't train for 3 weeks, more or less. I did a little bit of cycling, but I couldn't do a lot because of the blood circulation to heal the wound. And then I didn't do a lot. And then I go out and have the 2 easiest motos of my life, and the biggest achievement of my life. So I was a little bit confused. So I wanted to go back and thinking, fuck, now I'm going to go back and I'm going to put all those 3 weeks where I didn't work, you lazy idiot. Now you have to put that work in again, But that now I understand from everything what I know about the sport, that it doesn't work like that. What you have lost, you cannot gain in a very short time. You have to be patient, and you have to slowly to build it up again. And that's probably the most difficult thing with getting injured, because a lot of people said, oh, you were really unlucky to get injured. Well, actually, all the small injuries I had in my racing career was actually a developing of myself, because I had time to think about how much I love this sport and what I wanted to do better. So I always came back a lot stronger than I was before the injury, So I would not say always injury is a negative thing, because you always have time to reflect and come back even stronger. And that's what I've proven so many times in my career. And that season, like I said, I was 8 or 10 races out. You were scoring no points because of injuries or crashes or whatever, but still finished 8th in the World Championship. So yeah, that was that was probably my best year riding wise, but unfortunately things happened behind me that I felt maybe I was not completely in charge of.
And just in 2005, you obviously made the change to Yamaha. What was the change, or what was the reason for making the switch to the teams? And from the outside, it looked like that team was built around Stefan Everts. Did you feel like that when you were his teammate? And it ended up being a pretty up and down season, but you did get another moto win. And what was it like being teammates with Stefan Everts? Did you get to ride with him much? He strikes me as a guy that wouldn't tell you all the secrets.
Yeah, just to take it from the beginning of the questions. Well, signing, I was very sad to leave Honda, and I think Honda was very sad to leave me, or not having me on the team for the following year, because we had such a great success over the last 2 years. But the circumstances was that I signed a contract from 2003 to 2004. Pichon came into my team, or our team, in 2004 and signed until 2005. So basically, there was 2 riders in the team supported by Honda, but mainly just had sponsors from outside paying 2 riders that was top 5 in the world, which also cost some money, plus all the costs for the bikes and everything else what we were running. So basically, what happened is that Vigo Garcia Vigo, had a sponsor with Movistar, and he basically come in and said, okay, whatever amount you want, I'm gonna pay to get on the team. And that means that would pay a lot of the salaries for Pichon. So if I was still gonna sign for 1 year, 2 years there, they would have to go out and find sponsors, and we were still not a factory team yet, so we are not financially supported by Honda, Japan. So there was just no money to have 2 good riders. So you can say Paulo had he was forced to sign a rider that comes with whatever 300,000 euros into the team, and that's why it was not a happy ending. You can say that I would have loved to stay on that team, and I believe they would love to keep me, and we had such a successful years together, and we had also a really good relationship with Mechanic and Paulo and everyone else. So that left me actually to sign with Yamaha, and end of that season I got injured with my knee, and I had to do like a reconstruction of my cruciate ligament. So that meant that when I actually signed the contract, I didn't have a chance to test the bike, because I believe at that moment with the bike that I was already on, and with still riding on a bike on Yamaha, which had a steel frame at that moment. Now it's completely different, because it's a completely different bike. You cannot even compare to that time. But let me put it like this with short words. If I have tested that bike first, there was 2 things I probably wouldn't have done. I will not have signed the contract, and I probably wouldn't have thought that Stefan Everts could win a world championship on that bike. And that was just the way that I was riding the bike. I know that it was not to say that it was a really bad bike, but it just didn't suit my style. It was just a completely reversed of everything what I was getting used to, with a Honda, riding that many hours for 2 years. And then the second question is, was it was the team built up around him? Yeah, everything that you had of information about suspension, engine, frame, all the setup was based around a rider that was very successful, and no doubt about that, but was also riding the bike in one way, which was a very unique way. And then you have 39 other riders. If I would have been teammate with Joshua Coppens, Pichon, everyone else, we would have more or less the same setup. When Pichon came into the Honda team in 2004, he wanted more power, he wanted this, he wanted that. And the team said to me, Brian, you need more power, you need to say, well, first of all, hang on a minute. I've just been 7 times on the podium. I finished 4th in the world on that bike. So don't you think that's a pretty good, kind of strategy to go into the 2004 season? If we just work a little bit my way, then that will make me achieve a lot more. So let Pichon do whatever he wants. He can go, with 90 horsepower, I don't care, but I'm going to go my way. And we actually ended up with the same set after the 3rd round of the World Championship. We had pretty much the same setup with suspension and engine. So I knew that I was quite confident that I could set up a bike. So coming in and riding that Yamaha, which was completely different to my liking, it was just very difficult because, of course, what you're going to say when you have a not so good motor and you said, yeah, I cannot ride this suspension. I cannot ride. I want different. And they say, yeah, but that guy that just came in over the line first, he ride with that suspension. It cannot be too bad.
Yeah.
And what can you say? You cannot even argue over that, The only thing that I used to say is that, yeah, but I'm not Stefan Everts.
Yeah.
But if you look at the 2 motors in Teutzenthal the year before, I beat him in both motors. So that means that I'm Brian Jorgensen and I want to win a world championship. So I need this bike set up like how I want it, But we were too far away from each other. I don't have long legs and I braked in a different way. I approached the corners in a different way, even if I learned a lot from Stefan of keeping my feet on the pegs and standing up. I took a lot of his knowledge and style into my style, combined with my own aggression. But it was very difficult. It was basically a year where you just have to put your thing over your mouth, and you cannot really say anything or do anything. You just have to get on with it and, do the best what you could. And, in terms of training with Stefan, there was not a lot of, we didn't train a lot together. We went on some of the same tracks for testing, but otherwise he stayed down in Monaco most of the time and only came for a few days of riding. The only thing I could compare myself with was some of the technical track that Stefan always used to practice on the year before, and the same with Cedric Melotte. I could only compare the times, and I was always faster with my bike. I beat all the track records, I believe, but I didn't win a world championship. So there was just something when it came to racing. I remember Japan was a very good place to be successful when you're riding for a Japanese manufacturer. And I didn't qualify very well. I qualified maybe 18, and I hold shotted the first motor, and I went from 1st to 7th in 1 lap. And I was riding absolutely on my limit, And that, just to tell you a little bit about how unsafe I felt on that bike. I was riding on my limit, and people were just going east and west, around me and jumping over me, and I just looked like a little scared chicken, So, but nevertheless, I always tell people. I try to always tell the students that I have, about believing in yourself and the whole mindset what you have to have as a racer. And I think one of the great mindset that I worked a lot on was always never give up and always give my best no matter what. You can have a bad qualifying, you can have a bad first motor, but you have to keep plug on and try to do as good as you possibly can. And Namur was a strange weekend for me. Again, I never really liked that track particular a lot, but I got on with it. And that weekend in 2005, was just a very weird weekend because I went in and I did probably the worst qualifying ever in history of my career, you know. And we got interviewed in the evening, and the people were asking, you know, the strategy for the riders for the Sunday race, and I was, you know, Stefan was like, yeah, of course, you know, I'm expecting myself to win. I've never been beating on this track. It doesn't matter if I ride a 65 or 125 or 500, you know, it just, he would always win on that track, and that was just the truth of it. So and then Pichon was like, yeah, I'm gonna, you know, do my best to beat Stefan. And then they came to me and they were like, hey, so Brian, you qualified 20th. And that year, you know, remember that they put the gate, you know, more, so you had a more advantage to the first corner. So they put it a little bit like with an angle. So the meaning of that was when the people qualified in a certain, you know, 1, 2, and 3, then they will also start 1, 2, and 3. So they will get the best racing for the first couple of laps. There was only one guy that could do that different. That was, you know, Crockhart. Probably he was always a bad qualifier. You think he could almost not qualify, and then he could still be top 3 in the day after. You think, how is that possible? But anyway, so I qualified 20th, and I had the question coming around to me on that evening, and they said, so Brian, what is your strategy? And I was sitting there and was like, well, actually, I was thinking in my head, well, I don't actually know. But I kind of played it a little bit, you know, that I had a lot of confidence. So I said to them, you know what, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do 2 Brian Jorgensen magic start. I'm going to hold shot both motos, and then I'm going to win the race. And they were looking at me, and you just see the smile. And, you know, Stefan was just, I could already know what he's thinking is like, that guy is just full of shit. So I kind of tried to went to sleep that evening, and to be honest with you, it was probably my worst nightmare of sleeping, because I you know, I was always the humble guy that when people ask me about how you're gonna do this weekend, I'm you know, my comment would always be I would do my best, you know. I will never put a lot of pressure on me, but now I actually twisted that story around, and I put a lot of pressure on myself, because now I fucking said to all the people that I'm gonna hold shot that moto and I'm gonna win the race, and they were like thinking I was 13 seconds slower than Stefan Everts and Pichon, because there was a 3-minute lap round. I was 13 seconds slower from 1 to 20th place, which is like a lifetime in racing, you know. So I didn't even know when I said it. It kind of like, why did you say that? But I went back and I didn't get a lot of sleep. And in the morning practice, it was the worst condition, because I don't see a lot. I only see 30% on my left eye. So because I was born with a little bit of a mistake on my left eye. So when it gets muddy and when it gets dark, I find it difficult to see. And if I get my roll off and I get a little bit of spot, you know, in the corner or whatever, you know, I'm basically blinded when I race. So I had to use like a special lens. So in the morning practice, it was so dark, it was raining, it was slippery. And because I had a lot of, you know, injuries with my knees, was probably my main injuries, with losing cruciate ligament and meniscus and so on, I need to put my feet on the pegs and not like just pedaling around with my legs. So I was like, okay, now you're really fucked. So I went out in practice and I tried to do a fast lap. And you didn't get a lot of laps in, because you only had 20 minutes and it was 3 laps. And I was only 12 seconds slower. And I remember people just, you know, they were just looking at me like, what are you doing, you know? But kind of I kept saying to myself, I'm going to do that whole shot. I knew that I was capable of it, even if I was outside the, you know, the middle of where the box is. But actually, yeah, I kept saying to myself, and even on the parade lap, or you can say the sighting lap, I just didn't know how I'm gonna do, you know, 16 or 17 laps around here without crashing, because the ruts and the water was just incredible. The 3 downhills, step down the hill, it was just it was so much water and so deep ruts. So I went into the start and I just kept saying to myself, I'm gonna take that whole shot, and I went off that start, and when everyone's shutting off, I just kept going. And I whole shotted that first moto, and I was riding around, and I just, I didn't really push. I didn't look at I said, don't look at the lap board. Don't look at anything. Just look at the track. So I did the first 20 minutes, not looking at my lap board or just a mechanic. I just looked at the track and just trying to ride. But it was confusing me a little bit, because when you went into the Citadel, you do the whole circle there. And after 15 minutes, I didn't hear any bikes. And when you turn left towards the finish line and jumping back into the wood, you'll be able to see the guys that jumps into the Citadel. So I was like, well, hang on a minute, why does nobody come in? Is everyone crashed, or is the race canceled? I couldn't really figure out. So the next lap I came around was just like about 20 minutes into the race. I looked at the lap board, and I was like plus 18 seconds. So I had an 18-second gap. And I was like, how is that possible? I had not even twisted the throttle, it was just like riding around on my pegs, just using my technique and kind of an enduro style. So I won the first, I was up to like 23 seconds of a gap. And then Stefan, when he came into second, he did an incredible pass there before the drop down of the very steep hill. He just went on inside of everyone. And I won that first race by 18 seconds. So it was like, when people are like, how did you do that? I said, fuck, I don't know. I just did it. And went out in the second moto, and I won I took the whole shot, and made a couple of mistakes. I remember I didn't really switch the line, and fell back to fifth, and finished second overall. So Everts won, of course, and me second, and Ben Townley was third. Was a completely, I drove home for that weekend. I didn't sleep all night again, because I was thinking, how do you do that, But I think one of the main factor of doing the racing is just not giving up, and just always believing that things are gonna twist around, and if you don't believe, for sure nothing's gonna happen. So that was one of my main structure. I think this is me. This is what I'm made of. I'm a believer, and I believe everything is possible, and that's been pretty much all my life.
You retired then after Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, sorry. So that season was a lot up. Yeah, was a lot up and down. It was a lot up and down, and I never really felt that comfortable on the bike. So I signed a contract with Honda again for the 2006 season, and felt great on the bike. We had an incredible setup. Everything was perfect. And then going into the season, I also felt really good. I had that massive, you can say, knockout in Portugal when I was riding in 2005, where I lost 7 hours of my memory, which kind of also made my season in 2005 a lot of up and down. I couldn't really figure out what was going on in my head, and why I could not focus and concentrate for the second moto. And I thought, don't blame it on that big crash, just blame it on yourself. And I kept, believing and thinking, but there was something that I was not quite the same after that. I think it took me a long time to recover, and maybe some people maybe said that I didn't never quite recovered from that. But I signed in 2006 with Honda again, and basically had I was fit, and bike and team was ready, but I was just not there anymore in the same way that I was before. So I also got injury in my back. I started getting a lot of pain in my back suddenly, and I had to go on and off the hospital to make injection. And I felt that I was never excuses for my own result. I always was very honest with the press and myself, and what is right and what is wrong. And here, when you can see people asking, "Are you gonna be okay this weekend?" And I felt really okay now. And then sometimes, I got such a hard hit on my, I don't know what you call it in English, the coccyx or the tailbone or whatever. When that bended, I start getting a lot of problem with my back. So that was an old injury that came up from when I was back, when I was really young. So I bent that tailbone one time, and then they keep trying to take it out, and I don't have to explain how they did that, but very uncomfortable way. And that was enough for me. That I thought, when I had to do the injection into my back, and I just thought, okay, now I actually came to the point in my career where I think that was the first time I think this is not worth it. I went through a lot of pain. I went through a lot of suffering and a lot of training like everyone is doing.
Mm-hmm.
But at that moment, I felt that was it. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to go through that pain anymore. So I remember calling up my mom, and I didn't say anything to the people around me. And I said, you know what? I think I'm going to stop my career. And she said, you know what? I think that's a good idea. So I made my announcement in Europe 3 rounds before the finish. And, I felt I did it in a proper way, and, got to thank all the people that's been around me and with me. And yeah, it was a great finish. I exit the sport in a respectful way, and told everyone what was up, and I didn't want to be there just to be there. I want to be there to win a world championship, and if I could see that was not possible, then I would rather be out. I was never a rider that just did it for the money or whatever. I did it for the pride and for myself, and the challenge to become one of the best in the world, of the circumstances and possibilities that I had, and I made the best out of it. And I wanted to keep it that way. So I stopped, and tried to recover my body, because the last, 5 years or 4 years, I trained a lot, and I did a lot of, you can say, I took a lot of pain, and that resulted also in some great achievements, but I could feel that I was not more wanted to do that. I was finished in my head to keep coming back after injuries and believing that I could be there and I should be there. I was mentally drained, and I was also I was completely drained. So it was a good decision, and I'm very proud of that decision to make, because believe me, it's not tough when you've done it for all your life, and you met so many great people, and had the great success of achieving what you have achieved.
Was that transition difficult? Because as you say, that's your whole life, and that's your purpose for your whole life. And did the coaching kind of replace that to give you enjoyment and something else to focus on?
Yeah, it was definitely a very tough decision, and I think for most people, I cannot even explain that decision. People said, yeah, I'm fine with it. Now I just go on to something else. I believe they're lying, because it is, it is very tough. You build up, first of all, your mentality, your personality is built up about racing. You build up an identity as well in other people's eyes, and in every people's eyes that knows you is, suddenly you can feel that just got taken away. And you stand there and look back at yourself in the mirror and think, okay, so without the bike, without being successful, without, all those things, who am I then? Who am I? It was a very difficult time to get through. It's kind of, you have to think, okay, what do I do now? Because people said, yeah, but didn't you prepare yourself that you knew that you could stop one day? Yeah. I also prepare myself mentally that maybe I could get paralyzed one day. But it's not something that, when I'm lying there, I just have to deal with it. And that's when you stop. That's the moment, because if you start thinking about, okay, I'm just going to do those. I hate when people do those. I'm going to do those last 6 races and then I'm going to retire. I'm going to do 1 more year and then I'm going to retire. No, fuck. I have a different mindset. If I'm going to stop, I'm going to do this race and that race, and that's finished. Then I've stopped. It's not something that I will think about when I'm racing. Okay, I'm also going to stop next year. I'm either on it or I'm off it. So it was a tough decision to make that switch, and thinking, what I'm going to do now. And people ask me, what are you going to do after? Fuck, I don't know. I really don't know. And then I kind of reflected on my career, and I was also very, don't get me wrong, I was very disappointed of myself in some ways, because I wanted to be a world champion. I worked hard to be a world champion. That was my only goal. And when you don't get that, you kind of feel that you failed, You kind of felt that you failed on your goals. After a little while, I kind of reflected on everything, and I thought, fuck, you've been individual, you've been 17 times on the podium, you've been 6th in the world, you won European Championship, you've been 4th in the world in the main class, you won Grand Prix. You cannot be ungrateful for what you got. You know, there's people that's raced all their life and put as much work into it as you have, but never won, you know, a race, or never even been on the podium. So you kind of twist that negativity, or you can say failure, around to something that's positive, and think, you know, the main thing of what I did is that I did absolute my best. I sacrifice, in a lot of people's eyes, I sacrifice a lot. And in my eyes, I didn't sacrifice anything, because it was my choice. It was my choice to train 5-6 hours a day. It was my choice to, you know, abuse my body and my mentality and everything, because that's what it takes to become one of the best. So I was, after a little while, I start, you know, really accepting that this is just a new life. You know, you're getting older, and you just have to find other things in life. And I became the national coach of Denmark. I took 1 year off pretty much. I raced in the Danish championship. There was 4 rounds, and I won the Danish championship, and that was a great way for me to finish my career. You know, I won my first championship back in whatever 86 or 87, and then on a Kawasaki 85. And I won my last championship on a MX1 class on a Kawasaki 450. So I kind of finished that off also to people to say, you know, I kind of finished where I started. Mm. So and then I became the coach of the National Federation for 3 years, and that's basically what I do now. You know, I don't work for the federation anymore, because I knew that for me, it was better to be myself. You know, I don't. You know, I never took orders from other people. I made my career, and I took fully responsibility for what I did and how I did it, you know, 100%. And that was for me to being a coach. You know, I didn't like to be told of what I have to do, you know, because there was nobody at that time that ever been so successful, you know, coming from Denmark. So I kind of felt, well, actually, if you hire me to do this job, maybe it would be also a good idea for me to do my job, you know, and that means I know what I have to do, and what it have to do to become successful. So I worked there for 3 years, and that was a great years working with, you know, some young riders, Thomas Kjær Olsen, Rasmus Jorgensen, and those people, and it was a great way to that was a great, you know, way for me to come into coaching and try to reflect on everything else, what I have learned and how I learned it, and start working with young riders and try to understand, you know, how do they think, because then again, my mentality may not work towards their mentality, because I did it my way. And that's what you learn with coaching, you know. It's like, I think I have a great privilege of maybe never winning a world championship in that way, that I say, you know what, I did it my way, and this is what I learned. But they can say, yeah, but you didn't become world champion. And I said, no, that's true. So now you have to find a way to do it your way. But I can give you all this, say, don't do this, don't do that, you know, do it this way. And then you already have a good stepping stone to how to become successful. If you have routines and you want to be able to train, because it's one of the most physical sports, you know, on the planet. So if you're not willing to put work in, I can assure you that you're never going to become successful. And that's some of the things that I discovered. Even if you have a lot of talent, you have a lot of will and determination, it's just not going to happen if you're not willing to sacrifice physically as well.
Yeah, and just on the last question from me, you've been working with young British talent, Bobby Bruce, who's showing a lot of potential right now on his 125 in the British Championship and the EMX 125 series. What do you think his potential is, and what sort of things are you working on him at the minute?
You know what, with Bobby, I actually already started working with him when he was riding Kawasaki 85 and then going up to the 125. I was actually one of the decision to move him up to the 125 quite early, because he was getting quite big, and other terms and condition, I could see that it was maybe getting a problem. So I worked with him before, and we had a couple of years apart, and then start working with him again. And mainly, you know, one of the main things, of course, you know, I think all preparation really starts in the winter. So that's what I've been doing, you know, also with him. You know, I prepare the riders in red sand and do a lot of, you know, riding and cycling. And I'm so blessed that I'm actually still having the will and determination to be, even riding on a motorcycle. So all the technical parts of what I do and show, I can do it myself still. Maybe that will not carry on. I don't want to do motos with them because I know that I can only last for like 15 minutes maybe. But I do a lot of cycling with them. I do a lot of training with them. So that's something for me that is really, really nice. And I think most of the things that is important, first of all, Bobby is a very skilled rider, technical wise. But there's other things, to become successful, you need to have routines, and you need to put all those things in place, and need to understand why you have to train, and when you're doing it, to be 100% focused of what you do, And then I think on Bobby's side, there's definitely mental preparation, or you can say there's a lot of technical side where we can improve here and there. I have a lot of experience, line choice or whatever, which is also a very important part. But when you have a rider that already have good technical understanding and becomes quite natural to him, there's a lot more on the mental side of having the routines, believing in yourself and going out to work really hard off the bike as well, which will give you a lot stronger possibility to be successful in this sport, and also to be strong mentally when you know that you have done everything that's possible, and not only just done a little bit of cycling and done a little bit of running, but there's a difference between doing it and then doing it right. And that's basically what I have achieved with Bobby and still achieving, and I hope to work with him, for this year and the years to come, because I think that he have potential to be very good if we do it in the right way. And I think being a coach as well is a lot of things. There's other great coaches, and I'm not saying that I'm God or anything, but it's very important to find people that you clash together with. So first of all, you need respect for your coach, and the other way back, because and then you need to that person needs to understand, everything what I have done in my career doesn't bring me to be better than him or anything. But I always speak to my you can say students with a lot of respect. It's like, no matter if you are up here or you're down here, I think it's about respect, because if you speak to other people with respectful way, you also get respect back. It's not only about, I'm Brian Jorgensen, I have done this and that, because nobody really wants to hear about that, because that was so many years ago that people almost start forgetting it. But it's more the road to be successful. What can he use from my road to be successful to his road to be successful, which is important. It's not important to tell him, yeah, I was one of the best and I beat him, because it doesn't matter. What is important is the road to get from here to there, and how do we do that, and how do we fit that rider in to be motivated. And he's maybe not the same as me, that like to train on his own. I mean, I can go up a mountain on cycling. I still did it this morning, and I still do a lot of training, not because I have to, but because I love pushing myself. But not everyone loves to push themselves, so someone needs to push them, and that's basically what I'm here as a coach, is trying to find out, the best balance. And there's also riders that said, I don't care really how much you pay me. I'm not gonna work with that rider, because I can feel the chemistry is not there. So I think it's important to recognize that when you're bringing people to the top, when you have a group, when you have a training day, yeah, you're gonna realize that some people wants to understand more than others, and maybe not everyone wants to be a world champion or wants to be a British champion, but they just want to have fun and learn. And you know what, there's space for them as well. But I just have a thing, when people say they want to be the best, I'm just asking one more time. So say, what do you mean about being the best? Yeah, I want to be the best. Say, okay. So that means that you're willing to put like 5 to 6 hours every day, 360 days a year, and to suffer and to sacrifice everything. And the answer after that could be a yes, or it could be a no. And I'm not saying most people say no, but you definitely have people that is hesitating a little bit more. Maybe okay, maybe I would just like to be a club champion then, because it is a lot of hard work, and I know, because I've been there, and I had that mentality that nobody needs to motivate me to get up in the morning and do my work or do the motos of 40 or 50 minutes, because I did it because I wanted to be successful. and I wanted to be the best. And you know, I was lucky to have a family that supported me in that, and I was also very blessed and lucky to have a dad that unfortunately couldn't be with me all the way, but really never pushed me to be anyone, or you know, to get better results or whatever. You know, he got up 4 o'clock in the morning and he came home 4 o'clock, and I was ready with the bike, and I learned how to maintain the bike since I was 5-6 years old, you know, and I was always in the garage with him there, helping and everything. And it's, you know, he said, you know, if you don't do that, you know, it's fine, but then we're just not going to go riding, because I cannot get up 4 o'clock in the morning and then come home at 4 and then start washing the bike and get the bike ready. So if you're not willing to sacrifice maybe your friendship with other people after school, it's just not going to happen. So he led everything up to me and said, you know, it's up to you. You know, we can ride 2 times a week, 3 times a week, but you got to do the work. And you're going to do maintenance of the bike, and I will help you and as much as I can. And that was a great teaching, and I respect that a lot from my you know, my mom and my dad. You know, they sacrificed everything for me to be successful, and that's probably also why I had this determination to be, you know, nobody needs to tell me what to do, or you know, or to go running or cycling or whatever, because I had my dad, you know, thinking, you know, I want to make him proud. You know, I knew that, you know, my family sacrificed everything for me to go racing. And when he passed away, you know, I kind of felt that it could go 2 ways. Either I could be very weak and blame it on him why I never became successful, or I really could took myself in the neck and said, you know, I'm gonna fucking show you that, you know, all the hard work that you put into it, all the money that you spend on me is well spent, because I take it seriously. And I think for me, he never probably wanted me. He never talked to me about, you know, if I want to be a world champion, because, you know, we never got to that stage to talk so much about that. But it was my determination and my will of succeeding that made who I am today. And I'm you know, I'm very proud of that, to where I became. You know, some people say, yeah, but he also had this and that, and maybe, you know, he never won a world championship. But, you know, to be honest, from where I came from and how I got about with everything, I'm very proud of what I have achieved, and I feel I can be proud, and he's proud of what I've done, and you know, that's the most important thing. And you know, that leads me on to, you know, I have my own son that rides a little bit, and you know, wants to have some fun with it, and I'm never any difference with him than my dad was with me. You know, I remember, you know, if I won races, my dad will say, good job, you know, and if I lost races or I didn't get any result, he was still coming around and said, you know, try to do it better next weekend, you know. And that was that's the fundamental of why I still enjoy riding today, and why I just love to push myself, and why I still trying to be in good shape and to be a good ambassador for the sport. It's because I love it, and not because I'm pushed in to do something that, you know, I don't want to do. And that's the same, you know, people ask me, what about your son when he rides? Do you want him to win? And, you know, I don't care. You know, if I can see that he smiles, if I can see that he enjoys what he does, I don't care if he ever gonna be, you know, world champion or club champion. He did one race last year. That was his first race. And I was not there because I was with Alvin Östlund in Mantova for the GP. And, you know, he sent me some videos where he took the start and came around. It was just a small race. It was not big or anything, but he won that race. And, you know, just that feeling to see him, even if I know the reality, yeah, but it was just a small club race. But it doesn't matter, you know, because his happy face, and, you know, he showed me, look, Dad, I got someone to film that I took the start. It was the most proud moment in you know, my life. Just to see him really enjoying of what he's doing is, you know, I never cried about racing, and I never felt sad about. Of course, I've been mad at myself if I didn't produce the result I think that I should be getting. But I always, you know, everything with racing was always a big smile, because that's what I've done for all my life without any pressure. And I think a lot of parents can learn from that behavior. You know, just have fun. You know, it's the main thing. You know, when you have fun, you will, you know, and if you have fun and work quite hard at what you do, you will become successful in one way or another. But the parents and the kids, sometimes they don't have the same achievement. The dad think he's going to be a world champion in 2 years, and he only rides a 65, and the kid just want to ride, just want to have fun. He doesn't care about having 4 other bikes and tuned by this and tuned by that. He just want to ride the bike. And when I won my first championship, I never had a tune pipe or tuning pipe on my bike or anything until I was, I don't know, probably when I went up to the main 125 class. I just rode stock. I know it's a different world, and we cannot take any comparison, but my dad had enough time to try to make money just to buy a bike for me. And if you have to modify that by another 2 or 3 grand, it was just never possible. So here you can ride and have fun. And that's probably why also he never put any goals. I just went out and I became quite successful in very short time. And it was like, hey, that's great. We're having fun with this. So my motivation to be the best was definitely came from him as well. And I can thank him a lot for that. And that's what I want to take on to my own son. If you want to ride, I'm going to try to help you as much as I can. But I need to see your motivation to do things and want to do things. I never want to say, I'll be going out riding on Wednesday. It's rather him that says to me, Dad, can we go out and ride on Wednesday? So that's my personality, and that's my kind of a story in life, that I think, to be successful is something you really got to find the real passion for doing what you do. And that's, when I see today's racer, I respect a lot. I respect anyone that tries their best, and I know being in a world championship, everyone is, doing hard work, and only a few can become very successful in what they did and what they do. But Antonio Caroli is probably my kind of biggest hero, because you can just see that guy is just doing it with so much passion. I was teammate with him, or I can say that he was on my team in 2003. When he first came on the scene, nobody had heard of him, and it was great to see him develop it. Like at that time, it was completely different personality. He didn't want to train, and it was just like coming out in the middle of our motors and just want to put the bike sideways and do knack-knacks. But he's a lot more than that just now. He's done such a many great achievement, and I believe his personality and his mindset is a good way for him to be so successful. He enjoys the moments. You can see that he do a lot of passion, have a good team behind him, Decali, which has been with him since 2004. So it's like a massive family, and I believe that's the way for him to be successful.
That's brilliant, Brian. That's, I think, of one of the longest, but also the best podcasts we've done so far. A lot of detail, a lot of insight into your career and the ups and downs, and how you've come through very difficult times to still be successful in probably the toughest sport in the world. I want to thank you for your time, and thank you for everyone that listened. And we'll be back with more podcasts. But for now, on this podcast, thanks very much for listening, everyone. Thank you.